Good day, and thank you for joining this, what's set to be a fantastic panel discussion on Africa's digital decade, exploring the big trends for the next 10 years. I have a fantastic panel joining me. Tunde Fafunwa, the lead advisor for Digital Center of Excellence at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Tunde says that his mission is to create globally inclusive technology platforms that improve lives. As lead advisor to the Economic Commission for Africa's Digital Center, Tunde is responsible for leading and building ECA's digital initiatives across digital ID, trade, and economy. These initiatives include leading the Africa Communications and Information Platform team, which covers over 600 million mobile users, co-leading the digital transformation strategy for Africa with the African Union, which was adopted by the heads of state at the AU Summit in 2020. Tunde serves on several corporate and non-profit boards. He is an innovation judge for MIT and Etisalat, a digital growth and inclusive speaker at the International Institute of Finance, Digital Finance Inclusion Summit, at the World Economic Forum, and World Summit on the Information Society. Tunde has contributed to the Pathways for Prosperity Digital Diplomacy and Governance report and was the coordinator for the e-Transform landmark study. He has an MBA from the Sloan School at MIT and a master's in technology and policy also from MIT. Razvan Ungureanu has served as Chief Technology Officer, Razvan Graham has served as Chief Technical Officer for Airtel Africa since 2016. Razvan started his telecoms career in telecommunications on September 1992 at the National Institute for Design in Bucharest, Romania, as Senior Radio Communications Design Engineer. He worked for the Orange Group under various banners and in various roles between 1997 and 2014, after which he moved to the Digicel Group and now Airtel. He holds an executive MBA from EM Lyon and Cranfield University and a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering from the Institution of Electronics and Telecommunications faculty in Bucharest, Romania. Winn is the founding president of the Bitcoin Association and global advocate for Bitcoin SV. Jimmy joined nChain, a blockchain research and development firm, and then helped launch the Bitcoin Association after a 21-year career as an intellectual property and digital technology lawyer. Over his legal career, Jimmy was a partner at 3 major US law firms, most recently Davis Wright Tremaine LLP. He represented multinational corporations and emerging companies in many sectors, including technology, entertainment and media, sports, financial services, consumer products, retail, and automotive. Jimmy graduated college at age 19 and law school at age 22. He was formerly chair of the State Bar of California's Intellectual Property Law Section and co-chaired the Beverly Hills Bar Association's IP, Internet, and New Media section. Jimmy is a strong diversity advocate and he co-chaired the California Minority Council program. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. This is bound to be a very interesting discussion. Tunde, I'm going to start with you. Perhaps if you could just give us a brief 1 to 2 minute overview of where you are right now and what your role is.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jan. So as you mentioned, I'm the lead advisor at the Digital Center for Excellence at the United Nations Economic Commission for Addis, in Addis. And our key priorities at the moment are a digital transformation strategy from 2020 to 2030 that we worked on with the African Union. So that's our key priority, and we've been working despite COVID to work with regional commissions and national governments, private sector, social organizations to pursue that.
Thank you very much. Razvan, what about you? Where do you find yourself and what's your role entail?
Hi, everybody. My name is Razvan Graham. I'm the Group CTO of Airtel Africa. We are serving in 14 countries in Africa, more than 120 million customers. So basically, we are a mobile network operator, one of the biggest one in Africa. So we are delivering mobile services, in certain countries, fixed services, enterprise services as well, and financial services. So basically, Airtel Money services. So our focus is to best serve in terms of quality of service and coverage our customers in terms of voice and data services. and we are striving to position ourselves for the future in such a way to build the best network African network.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Jimmy, take it away. Where are you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jimmy Nguyen. I'm based in the United States, but I lead the Bitcoin Association, which is a Switzerland-based global industry organization that supports one of the competing versions of Bitcoin. It's called Bitcoin SV, which stands for Satoshi Vision. And as we'll talk about, the biggest difference in our philosophy is that Bitcoin, in our view, is more than just a digital currency. It is also a network protocol, just like the internet protocol powers the internet. It can be used to power the world's new data network and distributed ledger that can transform all sorts of business and government activities. And so I lead our efforts around the world to grow Bitcoin SV to be the world's not just dominant digital currency, but blockchain and data network for the world, which has power for all regions, including Africa.
Perfect. From policy to telecommunications to blockchain, I think that we have assembled a formidable panel to discuss what Africa can look forward to in the next 10 years. And Tunde, to go back to you, the UNECA has a Center for Statistics. What does the data say about how the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown have affected African economies? Will we feel the impact of this for the next 10 years?
That's a big question, and the full answer is we don't know. But we do know some of the immediate and medium term effects of COVID, particularly not just on the health side, which perhaps has not been as devastating as originally expected, but from all the actions that have had to be taken in terms of lockdowns and restrictions of movement, closing of borders and airports and so on. And those have had a significant effect on economies across the 55 countries on the continent. It's included, delay in the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area, contraction of GDP, perhaps the first recession across the continent in 25 years. We are expecting more than 30 million people to fall into poverty because of the various measures. There's been a reduction in foreign direct investment, in trade with China, with the EU, with all the key trading partners who, of course, are also facing their own situation. So economically, in the short term, in the medium term, very devastating. Increase in debt levels. I could probably go on. But certainly the impact has been significant. It's being felt now, and it's expected to continue at least in the medium term over the next few years. And of course, that will affect the longer term outlook as well, depending on the response.
Wow, that's quite dire, but good to, I think, start with a dose of realism. Razvan, moving to you, and you have a unique perspective of Africa as a continent when it comes to telecommunications, and the regulatory environment is quite different from country to country. So can you give just an overview of the kind of regulatory challenges that you face across the continent?
It's true. So as person operating in Africa, when you come from outside, you believe that one continent, one policy, so you can take one rule and apply it across. And that's not true. Actually, I manage 14 countries. I have 40 different contexts. So one of the aspects is diversity. So you have to engage and you have to discuss with 14 different regulators and try to align and get a level of understanding. So that's one of the challenges. The second one, there are different levels of maturity, of course, and understanding with the regulatory. But what is surprising and what I can affirm very strongly is that our collaboration with the regulatory is quite good. So the regulators are listening. They understand that telecommunication is a key sector, vital sector for the economy and for the country. If you come back to the COVID context, for instance, they understood very quickly that without telecommunication, the population is suffering a lot. So we collaborated and they provided us a lot of support. For instance, providing us temporary spectrum to sustain the surge of traffic that we had. So we are working very tightly. They are open for dialogue. As soon as some misunderstanding, which anywhere in any place is happening, they're open for dialogue, and that's the most important. So they listened, and we can open a breach for a dialogue, and finally we find a common understanding.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the brief overview. Jimmy, there have been a handful of major Bitcoin forks, and you've kind of alluded to it in your introduction. What sets Bitcoin SV apart? What does Satoshi Vision mean, compared to Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin Gold?
The reason there are now competing versions of Bitcoin is that when the Bitcoin ecosystem was developing over the past 10, 11 years, there were debates and fights within the Bitcoin community about whether Bitcoin should scale, meaning whether its blockchain and data network should grow bigger to have bigger blocks to hold more transactions and more data on the blockchain. There were some who wanted to go big and others who wanted to keep the blockchain small. And that's what led to, as you mentioned, all of these forks. We believe in Satoshi Vision, which is what the creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, expressed early in Bitcoin's life, that Bitcoin never hits a scale ceiling. Its blockchain should scale big. Instead, the Bitcoin Core BTC developers limited the block size on BTC to relatively small, so it only does 7 transactions a second. It would be like creating email in the early days of the internet and setting a limit on the number of emails that could be sent worldwide. Email never would have grown if you had kept the network small. So we believe in scaling Bitcoin big. So unlike BTC, which does 7 transactions a second, Bitcoin Cash right now, their network capacity is, I believe, about 60 transactions a second. We have no cap on the amount of block size, transactions, or data that can be processed on the Bitcoin SV network. It's up to market forces. That means we can grow Bitcoin to be more than just a digital currency. And our transaction capacity right now is about 2,800 transactions a second. Visa and the Visa network does about 50 to 60,000 transactions at peak. We believe we'll hit that next year on our main network and are building to a world where we think we can do millions of transactions a second, so that Bitcoin can power not just a more efficient digital currency for the world, but its network can be used to power tokens, smart contracts, Internet of Things, device communications, and a whole array of digital interactions that can be monetized, where the data we send across the Bitcoin network, for example, your personal information, healthcare data, internet activity, IoT device communications, that actually can be monetized because the data is reflected on and recorded on the blockchain and actually can carry value in the form of Bitcoin. It's fusing data and money together, bit plus coin. And the Satoshi Vision is to scale that really big so that the Bitcoin network leads to a world where everything is on chain, just like in the internet world, we have everything that can be online.
Excellent. Thank you for that background. I think that'll be valuable as we move the discussion forward. But Tunde, back to you. Another big question regarding the digital divide is something that we've spoken about a lot. It comes up at just about every AfricaCom I've been to, and now more than ever, we've seen the real cost of the digital divide. How concerned should governments be about the digital divide?
We think very concerned. I think we know that historically, women communities that are challenged or marginalized have seen, disproportionately lower use and access to technologies and digital services. And of course, for example, private schools across the continent were much more easily able to adapt to the COVID situation, and everybody already had laptops and an internet connection at home. But those in the disadvantaged communities, again, we've seen a widening of that. I think the reports have also shown that girls disproportionately are further restricted from school and learning. So yes, it's a huge concern. Now, on the other hand, we know that the technologies and the capabilities are there to address the problem, right? And with the right policies, with the right approach, perhaps with the right public public-private partnerships, these issues and divide can be addressed. They should be addressed, and we have the capability to address them. So while we think that it is a big concern, we're actually excited about the fact that the need for the deployment of the various technologies is not just important, but is available. And perhaps if we talk a little later about, the opportunity for Bitcoin and distributed ledger to give people better agency over their own information and data, I think that there is huge opportunities to start addressing the divide.
Well, while we're on the topic, let's talk about what can be done to shrink and ultimately eliminate the digital divide. Is this something that can be achieved in the next 10 years?
Short answer, I think yes. I think we can certainly make huge progress. As I said, the technologies are there. Some of it is access, some of it is affordability. We need to get broadband out to the rural and other communities. There's ways to do that. There are funds to do that through the Universal Service Access Fund and an ability to pay out of that early and get reimbursed. There are new technologies coming along in terms of, freeing up of wideband and other space as broadcasters move off certain frequencies. There are balloons at high altitude. There are all kinds of things. But we know that that's just the start, because the next step is to ensure, apart from access and affordability, is to ensure that the digital skills are there, that people have access to educational tools. And of course, there are many of those that are free and open source on the net. And then perhaps one of the final things is exactly what Jimmy's been talking about. How do we give people agency over their own information and data that has value? Well, great. So if we're increasing access and it has value, Africans want to take advantage of that. They want to be acknowledged for their private information and data, and when it's used and is creating value elsewhere, to be part of that. And I think the new technologies and the approach to Bitcoin and distributed ledger provide that. So it's an exciting future, and we have the pieces to bring together.
Jimmy, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in there, because it's such a perfect time to talk about what Tunde has mentioned. From your perspective, what role does Bitcoin and Bitcoin SV have to play there?
I think Bitcoin SV is the real path to fulfill this vision of a future where individuals can own, control, and monetize their own data. And BTC, because they kept the block size small on the original Bitcoin network, transaction fees are really high on that network. I checked the other day, and it was a couple of weeks ago about $3 to send on average a single BTC transaction. That's far too high to power a world payment system that rivals Visa and MasterCard. But for the idea of using the blockchain to be able to manage and monetize our data, that's also far too high. We need a network that can handle micro payments and micro transactions. And Bitcoin SV has scaled so big that our median transaction fee right now is less than 1/100th of a US cent. And we think that'll go even lower, so that it'll be fractions and fractions of tiny cents, so that you can use the blockchain to interact with data. How would this work? It means on the internet, there's not an efficient way to send money right now, right? Where there's all these payment processors, PayPal people in the middle who take cuts of money. And therefore you can't send, here's a good example. It is not remarkable to send $1 million US anywhere in the world. That can be done and has been able to be done through wire transfers easily and banks. It is remarkable to be able to send 1 penny somewhere around the world instantly. And that is the level of microtransaction, micropayment capability that Bitcoin SV is enabling, so that if you record, for example, there's a company in the US that's building a healthcare record system on the Bitcoin SV blockchain, so that your healthcare information is ultimately recorded on the chain, encrypted to protect your privacy. And then you, as can be a consumer of your own health data, and can authorize a pharmacy, a medical research company, or whoever you want to access your data, and they can pay you in small amounts of Bitcoin SV. It won't be huge amounts. No one's going to, and same thing with your consumer data or your internet surfing activity. What if instead of Facebook and Google monetizing your data. You actually had control of it, and through the use of Bitcoin digital wallets and encryption keys, can easily authorize some company to access it, and they will pay you a small amount of money. That only works if the ability to send small amounts of money is possible, and that's what Bitcoin SV enables, because one, we've lifted the data capacity so that the data can actually be recorded to the chain, and then through Bitcoin's technology and our micropayment capability, enable people to exchange small amounts of value. And it would work when you are able to send cents, fractions of a cent, 5 cents, 10 cents. That's when this future is possible.
Mm-hmm. To get just a little bit technical about the functioning of Bitcoin SV there, in a follow-up question, one of the concerns that I've seen raised with regards to the amount of money, the transaction fees on the BTC blockchain, is that if that's not high enough, then when the block reward falls away, then there's little incentive for the miners to stay active on the network, right? So on Bitcoin SV side, what's the end game plan there for once all the Bitcoin is mined out? Is it about lots of small transactions that add up to that amount of money? So it's
Bingo.
Scale, like massive economies of scale, rather than small expensive transactions.
Bingo, that's exactly right. That's how Satoshi Nakamoto always designed Bitcoin. There is a subsidy amount that miners get paid now with each block, and that progressively gets smaller approximately every 4 years through this process called Bitcoin halvening. And because there's 21 million fixed supply of Bitcoin, eventually that keeps going down. And so the transaction fees have to grow in size and volume in order to make up for it, to keep mining profitable. And we believe that's only possible with high volumes of transactions in the network for small amounts. So it's scale. You get high amounts of transactions, even though the transaction fee might be 1 US cent, you get lots of them, powering a whole internet world, and you get the scale. In comparison, for example, the Ethereum network, one of the main competing blockchain systems, is struggling with scale. They're trying to launch Ethereum 2.0. Just a couple months ago, when the DeFi craze was driving a lot of trading activity, it hit $14 US to send a transaction on the Ethereum network. That's far too high, and while that sounds like it's good for the miners, it's bad for bringing businesses on board. Businesses who I talk to who want to build on blockchain, they need something that can handle enterprise scale, and they want low and reliable fees so that they can process huge amounts. We're talking millions, billions potentially of transactions. They don't want a network where it costs $3 or $14 US periodically to send a transaction. They need to know it's reliably 1 cent, half a cent, 1/100th of a cent.
Yeah, especially in the world of IoT, where there's small constant communication.
Yes.
It's essential. Razvan, I'm going to bring it back to you, and perhaps to broach the issue of regulations in a deeper way. How should governments and regulators make sure that they don't lag behind technology in the next decade? You've been in the telecommunications sector for a long time, and so you've been able to see those technology evolutions over the years, and how governments and regulators have kind of not kept pace with that. So what in your experience is the answer here?
If I look at the evolution of the last years, and I suppose we'll be facing the same type of challenges or trends on the next 10 years. The pace of technology it's very fast. So if you look at the evolution of 3G, 4G, 5G, and we're discussing now about 6G, the pace of evolution of the technologies was very fast. So one of the things that we need for regulatory is stable and predictable context. For instance, I'm speaking about spectrum. Today in Africa, if you want to roll out 5G, we don't have a very clear vision about when 5G will be available, whether it will be at an affordable cost, and whether it will be placed for everybody. So predictability, and in terms of cost and in terms of regulatory constraints, sometimes we are facing very unreasonable regulatory constraints, like I have to cover 100% of the country in 2 years, things like that. That means billions and billions of dollars, and this is unreasonable. So we have to come with reasonable requests in terms of time and providing the right resources, especially if I'm discussing about spectrum. Afterwards, providing support for connectivity. For instance, fiber optics is very important for us, and we are still seeing a lot of barriers that we have in our way, like a very huge right of way. The fact that we have, for instance, I have in one single country in 1 month between 100 to 200 fiber cuts a month. So for various reasons. So we have to regulate that. We have to make order, and we have to make the law in such a way that who is impacting critical infrastructure, impacting the telecommunication of a country, should face the law and support consequences of that. So this type of support we really need. That third environment is predictability in terms of vendor landscape. We can't afford one vendor to be available today, tomorrow not to be available, in the condition that we put millions on the billions on the table. We need a very stable and predictable environment in terms of who is allowed, who is not allowed, and who we can use as a vendor. And obviously, we take our measures in order to secure that aspect as well. So those are the key pillars that I'm trying. And obviously, we discuss about universal fund as well. For us, the operators, certain investments are not profitable. So if you really want 100% coverage in every corner of the country, we have to collaborate with the governments, and we need to reach a kind of support and funding from their side as well. So those are the areas that I see in order to really make really a jump on the telecommunication evolution for the next 10 years.
And I don't know if you can speak about this, but the countries where you've said that you have these hundreds of fiber cuts a month, can you name that country? And the question regarding stability of available vendors, are you referring there specifically to the uncertainty surrounding Huawei and other Chinese vendors at the moment?
Yeah, so speaking about fiber cuts, this is a general phenomenon across all African countries. So this is linked with the civil works, various sabotage, and the various, let's say, totally unplanned fiber cuts. So in the middle of the night, you have a fiber cut, you don't know from what is the source of it. So I don't want to emphasize a country, because it's not about a country. It's a general phenomenon across all countries. Regarding the vendor landscape, yes, I speak about Chinese vendors, but it's not only about that. We see that with the pace of technology evolution, that we have a lot of let's go back 5 years, because the horizon of time that we're discussing is 10 years from now. 5 years back, Alcatel was still there. If you go 10 years back, Nortel was there. They are no longer there. So it's not just about Chinese or Western European vendors. It's about how we can ensure a healthy environment, that the vendors has enough market share, they are profitable, and they are there for a long time, and how we can ensure that newcomers, they have their place to come and to challenge the incumbent vendors. I'm rather focused on this aspect rather than Chinese or non-Chinese.
Yeah. Is the answer to the question of vendor churn, for lack of a better word, open standards to make sure that if one vendor goes away, that at least the standard that the network is built on remains available to whoever comes next?
It's a matter of that, I will say. So that's why Open RAN, openness is coming. It's a fashion word, and probably it will be the trending technology on the next 5 years, I'll say. But let me give you an example for the computing area. Apple, it's a closed system, end-to-end. It's not an open system, but it's still performing, and they have their own market share versus PC and Windows, which is an open system. Doesn't mean that one is better than the other. There are two different philosophies and two ways to generate an end-to-end result. My vision will be a confrontation of the two styles. It will be the classical vendors that will still continue to deliver an end-to-end solution. And my guess that their performance end-to-end will be much better than Open RAN, which will be coming more with the cost aspect. So it will be a balance between cost versus performance that we have to balance.
Thank you very much. That was a great insight. Tunde, I'm going to come back to you, and I am conscious that we're running out of time. So perhaps we should talk about which technologies you predict will have the greatest impact on the digital economy of Africa in the next 10 years. You've mentioned blockchain, and you can talk about a little bit about what impact you foresee there, and what else you see coming down that everybody else should keep their eyes open for.
Wow, technology prediction. I
For the
wish.
next 10 years. I mean, this is not going to come back to haunt you at all.
No, I know it's fine. Well, actually, I think that, you know, what is exciting about the next 10 years is actually the mixture of technologies coming together. And I think it's the interaction between those that will make the significant difference. So, you know, as been talked about here, you know, the next generations of, you know, broadband and internet technology, both on the physical side, whether it's 6G and, you know, other ultra wideband type technologies, etc., are going to make a difference. Getting fiber more, you know, deeply into, you know, towns and cities and neighborhoods, because that still is, and to some extent, the ultimate backhaul is going to be critical. You know, blockchain, distributed ledger, what Jimmy's talked about in terms of linking that to micro payments, right, which fundamentally change the that people have over their information and data, and the importance of that. But 3D as well, the change in manufacturing and some of the elements around, you know, the fourth industrial revolution, where, you know, changes in micro manufacturing, etc., are going to make big differences. So I do think those are some of the key areas. I would also mention digital ID. Which is a big area that ECA focuses on, you know, whichever method or mode, and with all the security and data privacy, etc. But again, linking that to agency and the ability of individuals to identify themselves on a digital basis is going to be absolutely key.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, I wanted to ask you a very similar question in a blockchain context, but there's a big question that I really want to ask you, and that's got to do with what we've seen with MicroStrategy and Square adopting Bitcoin as a reserve asset. And this has happened just in 2020. Is this the beginning of a trend, and is this something that we'll see carried forward into the next 10 years?
I think it is the beginning of at least a short-term trend, which is often what happens in the cryptocurrency world. But I think it's actually a bit of a mistaken trend, because they're investing in BTC with the rationale that has been expressed to the digital currency world that Bitcoin is a, quote, store of value, right? And the reason that narrative had to be framed is that BTC's network became slow, congested, the transaction fees got high, and that's why nobody's using Bitcoin for payments in daily life, right? Nobody's using it. That's why Bitcoin SV had to emerge to basically restore the Satoshi vision and not treat Bitcoin as a store of value. The Bitcoin white paper, which introduced Bitcoin to the world in 2008, did not call Bitcoin a peer-to-peer store of value. It called it a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, a better way, more efficient way to send currency and money across the internet. We're trying to restore that and create a new trend, not treating Bitcoin as a reserve asset that big corporations buy just to increase in value. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with doing it. We want to see Bitcoin actually used in daily life to power new ways to send money, digital identity, ownership of data, and used actually as a data network plus currency. Wouldn't it be better if the Satoshi vision to actually use Bitcoin every day, all day, in all aspects of our life was fulfilled, as opposed to treating it as something that is just an investment reserve asset? That's the vision we want to accomplish, and why we believe in a world of one chain that's Bitcoin SV.
All right, so I'm not going to let you get away without a 10-year prediction. So can you talk a little bit about what you foresee in the next 10 years for the digital economy of Africa? What technologies are going to shape that?
Yeah, well, of course, I'm going to say that it's going to be blockchain technology that I think is really going to help advance, as Tunde mentioned, in combination with other developments, particularly with mobile, technology. I think that will integrate very well with our vision of Bitcoin to power, for example, IoT devices, smart communities, many mobile applications that are driven by the blockchain. So we foresee a world for Africa where you have Bitcoin SV as not just the currency used in Africa, but the ledger. to send financial as well as data transactions. So there's a company in South Africa called Centbee that's already created a Bitcoin SV wallet and a remittance system called Minute Money to more efficiently send remittance value between, right now, South Africa and Nigeria. They'll be expanding to other countries because it's so cheap to send money on Bitcoin SV, they can do remittance more efficiently. We'll see, for example, the use of one big blockchain to create more honesty and transparency in government activity because the Bitcoin blockchain is open, auditable, verifiable. This creates better ways to keep track of things like property title registry, to keep track of ownership of all forms of assets, tangible and intangible. Voting can be tracked on the blockchain in ways that create more honesty, which is an important concept of that Satoshi vision. And so we also see a future where Africa can use blockchain technology to catch up in many ways that are important with the rest of the world. I see it as a leapfrogging technology because there aren't a lot of countries that are really leading in the blockchain where a lot of people are, dealing with it. But it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurial developers to develop amazing applications that can really advance the whole region. So for example, there's a company developing a micro payment, peer-to-peer lending microservice to allow people to borrow small amounts of money and repay in small amounts of money automatically through Bitcoin smart contracts. That's great for small merchants, right? People who want to start small businesses and need just a little bit of loan of money and don't want to pay a very high interest rate. And a bank would never give them a small loan of money of, let's say, $100 US. But what if you could borrow $100 or $200 US to start your own small merchant business? That really has transformative power for empowering people in Africa, as well as many other regions of the world.
Thank you very much. Razvan, I'm going to give you the last word. And also, I'm going to ask you to make one of those technology predictions. But first, an opportunity to talk about blockchain. Airtel is no foreigner to blockchain technology. There were reports last year that Airtel is using blockchain for anti-fraud and anti-spam systems. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your plans are for blockchain, what the status is of that project? Do you plan to buy Bitcoin as a reserve asset?
Well, buying Bitcoin, I don't know. I can't position myself about that. Using blockchain as a technology, obviously, yes, we are very interested on that as a way to secure information, as a way to create the traceability of the information. But we are, to be honest, we are in the early stage of that. So I can't say that we are very advanced on that.
Mm-hmm. And in the next 10 years, what do you see as the technologies that will have the greatest impact on the digital economy of Africa in the next 10 years?
I think I'll split it in two. So first of all, I think we have a lot of basics to be fixed. And this is our day-to-day focus. So making power available, creating connectivity in every corner of the country, delivering the right speed for every customer. That the last one is I think it's a continuous concern for any operator in the world. But I think Africa, we need to fix first affordability, the fact that we can be reachable in any corner of the country, and with the big stability. So who operator is able to deliver that with high stability of the network, it will be the one that will survive on the next 10 years. That's the most important. If you come back to the technology, I believe, obviously, in 10 years from now, we'll probably be discussing about 6G, probably 5G rollout, because in Africa, we are facing at least 2 to 3 years delay versus the other countries in the world. So probably we'll be discussing about 5G rollout in a mass market. We'll be discussing about cloud, all the part of virtualization of the network. So we'll be moving from classical bare metal strategy to will become all a soft operator. That's why development of the data centers will become a key point, strategical point for us, and building big data centers, a reliable one with rich connectivity. The fact that Africa will become as well a pole of internet. So for the moment, we are discussing about internet. We are discussing connecting to London or Johannesburg or to Singapore or Paris, whatever. So internet will be brought in Africa. So Africa will be part of the internet in terms of generating content and in terms of accessing the content. So we'll have very big content delivery networks installed in Africa and reachable everywhere. We'll be moving more to the edge in order to secure the content. So we'll be developing edge data centers in such a way that in case of any disaster recovery, that content is kept safe and close to the customer. And afterwards, obviously, in terms of application, edge computing will be implementing more and more artificial intelligence in order to maintain in an efficient way the network and increase our reactivity, as well to compensate somehow the lack of skills that we have in Africa. So more automation will introduce more artificial intelligence, will be needed less skills, but more skilled in the sense of central teams that will be developing. Obviously, it's about enterprise. We'll be discussing a lot about private networks and the sophistication of the services in terms of security and richness of connectivity, software as a service, platform as a service, all type of services that will be delivered. And am I visible? Because I just deactivated the camera 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, you are visible.
Okay. So, and ultimately, it's about and security will become more and more a growing aspect of concern for us and for the other enterprise customers that we have. And more important for me, if we are going to the finance aspect, all the operation will be cashless. So today, if you take Kenya as an example, and COVID was an excellent accelerator from that perspective. You can actually do all your transaction, Bitcoin or not Bitcoin. What matters for me if everything is done without touching the cash, and that is done already today. And that phenomenon will be accelerated. We'll be supporting the governments and private enterprises to work more in the e-government, e-health, security aspects. So this type of application will be booming on the next 10 years.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, that was an excellent discussion. We are going to have to unfortunately break it here for Q&A. That was Tunde Fafunwa, the lead advisor and digital center for excellence at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Razvan Ungureanu, the chief technical officer for Airtel Africa, and Jimmy Winn, the founding president of the Bitcoin Association. I've been Jan Vermeulen, the editor-at-large for MyBroadband here in South Africa, and we're opening the floor to questions now. Thank you very much.
Your questions, which we've received many of in chat already. We have a very limited time to try to get through all of them. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Precious Mwagi asked, which sector will Africa's next unicorn come from? Any comment on the Andela and Jumia challenges? I think, Tunde, let's start with you. Do you have a sense of where South Africa's next unicorn startups will come from? And if you would like to weigh in on the Andela and Jumia challenges, please do so.
Sure, thanks for that, Jan. I think South Africa in particular, because of its leadership around manufacturing, some of it is extractive and other industries. I think we're going to see unicorns come from working in those sectors. We're looking at a 10-year time frame here, and I think that South Africa, particularly with regards to the African continent, is going to lead the area in digital technologies that have to do with mining and those kind of sectors. As far as Jumia and Andela, I think that e-commerce is not going to go away. I think we're going to see completely new versions of those, and people reinventing their business models around e-commerce and technology expertise.
Thank you very much. Razvan, I'd like to pull you in here. Do you have a view on where we can look for the next unicorn on the African continent?
Yeah, obviously I'm a strong believer on telecom companies. So I believe we can produce a lot of innovation around us, especially sustained by the new technologies, 5G, 6G, because we are looking of a 10 years horizon of time. Cloud computing as well. So any innovation, any startup around that could make a breakthrough. As well, banking system. I'm a strong believer that it's it's a very big territory to innovate. This link with probably blockchain, Bitcoin, and mobile money. So linking all together, for sure, it's a territory to be exploited. And whatever, so the next step will be everything about artificial intelligence, cloud, and virtual reality. Those are the areas where we see a lot of innovation startups coming.
Brilliant, thank you. Jimmy, from your perspective, how do you see the next unicorn of Africa?
I think the best opportunities come in blockchain and digital currency because it allows for two different possible revenue models that could create a unicorn. One, a digital currency that will power more financial services and financial inclusion, such as South Africa's Centbee, a Bitcoin SV wallet company in our Bitcoin SV ecosystem. But second, I think the bigger opportunity is in monetizing data. And that's what blockchain technology will allow to businesses as well as consumers to monetize their business data, their personal data. And that, I think, is the future because data is the most valuable commodity of the digital economy that we live in today. And any business that really leverages the power of blockchain technology, particularly, for example, with Bitcoin SV, to fuse data and money together and create a business model out of that, that's your next unicorn in Africa.
Brilliant. A great perspective. Thank you very much. And we've got a very vibrant discussion happening around blockchain and Bitcoin in chat. And to kick things off, there's a bunch of them, and I see them: Batlobeli Dlamini, David Yap, the conversation there. But perhaps, how can a digital currency like Bitcoin SV be an opportunity to make the African economy thrive? That's a question from Samuel Seri. Jimmy?
I think the best way to understand Bitcoin SV is big business opportunity from small payments. What the internet created was the ability to send data and communications around the world, but it did not have an easy way to send money, especially small amounts of money. And today we use payment methods to send, $100 US, $10 US to make a payment. But blockchain in the form of Bitcoin SV, which has scaled big to allow massive transaction volume fast with tiny, tiny fees, the median fee is 1/100th of a US cent, allows an economy to grow by business models that use very small payments. So a street vendor who can borrow small amounts of money through micro peer-to-peer lending on a platform that allows small transfers of money, using the Bitcoin SV blockchain as a ledger to be able to do remittance across countries. For example, Centbee in South Africa has a remittance product, making it very cheap to send money to Nigeria. Creating data models, as I mentioned, where people can monetize their data so that, for example, my consumer data from my internet search or social media, people could pay me 1 US cent, 2 US cents for. That's how you grow a digital economy, by using big, small payments to create really big opportunities. That's been only really possible on Bitcoin SV and not other blockchains.
And I think you've addressed John Murphy's question there, who asked if your technology can be used for migrant remittance transfers. And I think the answer there is yes. Simple one.
Already being done by Centbee.
Yeah. And so to touch on the conversation between Batlobeli Dlamini, Tunde, the conversation here is, once again, Africa is largely left out of any digital economy, and by extension, whatever economic benefits that may be gleaned from cryptos because of the legacy of poverty. The exclusion of rural women as a reality in the economy to come. David Yap says that there is some innovation happening there in Bitcoin and stuff, but it all seems to be, it doesn't address that question of people in rural areas that are left behind. I think we touched on it in the main panel, but perhaps your views on this statement, that this feeling that, once again, it feels like Africa is just getting left behind.
Yes, it's a great question, and that may feel so, but I'm going to suggest actually the alternative, which is almost 500 million Africans don't have any form of ID yet. And there are huge efforts across the continent and by multiple countries, of course, to provide digital identification. That's going to be the key to unlock so many of these benefits that Jimmy and Razvan and yourself have been talking about, which is the fact that people are able to identify themselves, They're able to control their data. They're able to participate in the economy. It gives us a chance to address the digital divide and the gap and the fact that in many cases, women are getting left behind. So digital ID is the key to unlocking that. And I think we'll see the next generation digital identification coming to Africa and giving the continent an opportunity potentially to actually, leapfrog.
Razvan, I'm going to give the last word to you. We're unfortunately out of time. Nelio de Freitas asks, will Starlink play a role in enabling Africa-wide internet economy?
Well, I can't say one specific project regarding covering from satellite a continent will strive, because I don't know how successful they will be. For sure, there is a huge need of covering Africa from satellite. I can't say now which technology will be, which company will be, but for sure it will be a need there, and this type of company will succeed. On the contrary, I don't believe that will be a satellite to person, to mobile. It will be a satellite to mobile operator and so on, and afterwards locally the signal will be distributed for the coverage and penetration in the buildings issues. So the short answer, yes, we have already technologies that will just improve the bandwidth and probably the cost, and cost will be the determining factor. So it will be basically a reliability and cost per megabit that will determine that.
Brilliant. Valuable perspectives all round. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me again this morning. Thank you so much to the questions in chat. We had a very vibrant discussion and you guys helped with that. So we really appreciate it. Have a great morning further. Enjoy the rest of the show. From me, Jan Vermeulen, the editor-at-large of MyBroadband, and on behalf of my panelists, thank you very much.